And here we are back again after a 2-week hiatus, a well-deserved vacation for Alexander Knight and Mark and myself. We just wandered aimlessly, bumping into walls, wondering what we were going to do on a Sunday. And now we're back to action, to show number 105 of The Last Angry DJ. My name is Mitchell KC Hill. The KC stands for my old radio moniker that I had when I used to be on the radio. I don't know why, but that was the thing we did. So we're happy to be here, and thank you for the gang that's already got a bunch of folks standing by to ask their questions and listen to what we have to say. I would like to welcome our returning hero, Mr. Alexander Knight, who is still a little bit jet-lagged and maybe a few other things after returning from his 2 weeks in Tokyo or Japan or wherever you were. What were you doing? You were hanging out there?
I was all over the place. I'll talk about it a little bit later. But yeah, I had a 12-day trip in Japan. We started off in Tokyo for 4 days, then traveled to Kyoto, or Kyoto, as the Japanese say.
With the K.
And then Hiroshima, and then finally Osaka was the last leg of the trip. So had a fantastic time.
When you went out at night in Tokyo and you kind of listened to the sound, did you hear any of that going on?
Is that Godzilla? Is that what you were playing?
That is Godzilla. Your scaly friend.
I did go to a really cool store that was selling Godzilla stuff, which was pretty awesome. I brought some stuff back for my nephews, but Japan's fantastic. We'll talk about it a little bit later.
Okay.
But
Okay.
Yes, for all of those that have joined us, thanks for being here. Sorry about the 2-week hiatus, but we are back with episode 105 of The Last Angry DJ, and of course, we've got somebody else on the show here. Let's go to Mark Giuliani. What's going on, Mark? What have you been up to the last 2
everybody.
weeks?
How are you? We got a lot of people starting to join the show. I see Tony Mobley and Brian Miller, and there's all kinds of sound effects now. We leave for 2 weeks and we come back, and there's Mitch playing with the sound effects.
You can't control Godzilla.
All right, Mitch, what do we have going on this week?
We got a lot going on. A few things did happen while we were away. It's like I like Bill Maher. He has on his show Real Time. He does like future headlines before they go away for a 2-week period. And a lot of my predictions have come true. One of them is that there still seems to be an erosion of newscasting organizations running into trouble. And as you can see quickly here is our first comment. CBS News announced, I guess, Friday, that they're shutting down their news operation the end of May. I think it's like May 22nd, something like that. Not totally a surprise, but according to the powers that be at CBS, they're saying this is not a shutdown or a rounding off of employees or whatever you call that. It's literally a downgrade. They just say, we have to succumb to the way things are going on in the marketplace, and people don't want to consume major network news operations anymore. They want to pick and choose their news from wherever they get it. So I think it's a shame because historically, CBS is one of the first network news operations. They did it back when there wasn't television. And then as TV came along, the great Edward R. Murrow, and other guys, Walter Cronkite, came on, and they were at that time the most watched news organization, and they were called the Tiffany Network. So I'm just saying it's interesting that something that was quite as big as CBS's Tiffany Network, and by the way, they famously stated they did not make money on CBS News for selling time on it. It was a loss leader, but it was a very prestigious operation for the organization to have. And what a difference a few decades makes. So we're sort of at that point in time where CBS, I guess it's who is CBS now? It's sort of Audacity. It's like all these different companies. They sold off a lot of the radio. I guess CBS is CBS, but yeah, they're into the business of doing streaming media shows and things like that. Mark, you're the one that has the most to say about this. I think you should jump in and give us your opinion about CBS shutting down operations for the radio.
Well, it's very sad. They were 100 years in the business, and it's the person that I learned radio from started out his career in CBS Radio working for Walter Cronkite. So he brought a lot of history with that whole relationship he had before he went on to ABC News, and told me lots of stories about Walter Cronkite and in the radio business. It's sad, but things are changing. You got mergers and acquisitions going on in the media industry. Paramount just purchased CBS, and they're trying to change the way CBS does business. CBS has also been doing digital media for probably 10 years now that I've seen them doing it, where they have a whole division that just broadcasts their nightly news and such over digital through the web rather than over the traditional broadcast systems. So there's probably a lot here to do with return on investment and how they were failing against the other leaders in the radio news industry, which I think I read this morning that Fox Radio News has 45% of the market. ABC Radio News has 30% of the market, and the people that are overlooking the return on investments and the shareholders' money are probably saying, you know what, maybe we ought to think about doing this a different way.
You know what's missing from broadcasting? Passion. And you have passion, my friend, because I know what you're doing on a local basis, doing live and local with your station WGMD down in Lewis, Delaware, on the coastal area of Delaware. It's passion. Passion is not operating in with a bunch of bean counters or boardrooms. They all do everything to the bottom line. And as I said earlier, CBS News was never really a money winner for the CBS organization. It was a prestige business for them. I mean, Walter Cronkite, who you just mentioned, was the most trusted man in America at one time because the sheer number of people that listened to him deliver the news. And it was not about opinions and personal editorialism. It was about reporting the news. Nowadays, you have to have an opinion. You have to have a political affiliation. Every network seems to have, they've sidled up to some aspect of the political genre out there, or milieu, as it says. So it's very hard to get behind a CNN or an MSNBC or a Fox or whatever. You can almost tell what somebody's politics is by their choice of news operation, because they want news delivered that closely resembles their outlook on the world as we know it. And everything else, they kind of eschew that point of view. So I think that's not what really news is meant to be. It's supposed to be an independent observation of facts and figures and what's going on, so that we know that there are no nuclear missiles pointed at us right now from Iran or not, and we need to proactively destroy aspect. It's just too messed and muddled up.
Well, and I think you bring up a really good point, because Walter Cronkite, you never knew where he stood on an issue.
No, not really.
He told you the facts, and you could guess at where he stood on it. But I mean, it really wasn't about his opinion back there. And I think I don't know. I was not in the industry when cable started to come out, and I think that's where a lot of the big network brands, as they broke away, well, not broke away from, but also included doing over cable as opposed to just over the air, they sort of transformed from telling the news as a journalist to having an editorial or a component about one side or the other. And I think that may not be the best thing for the whole industry, but that's where we are right now. And CBS has new owners, and you've got the FCC just the other day saying, hey, if you're not going to get behind the politics, then we're going to come in and start telling you've got to do both sides for every, the equal time thing. They want to bring all that back.
That's a world I don't want to live in. I really don't want to live in a world where the FCC says, unless you toe the line. That's what happens in dictatorial countries. Fascist countries dictate what your information that's going out to the public is, and this is how you have to toe the line on the war that's going on.
But nevertheless, that's what was said, and we don't know if that had impact on their decision, or this decision was made months ago. We don't know.
Oh, I think the fact that it's been losing money from the get-go. Fox kind of changed the rules quite a bit because they got more bombastic about their headlines and clickbait and things like that. And, for better or worse, and I don't deny their right to be able to have an opinion. It's just not the way I was used to and brought up to consume the news. I'm interested what Alex says because he's a little north of the U.S. of A. here. Is it happening in Canada yet, or do you sort of watch what's happening in the United States and say, "Oh God, I hope we never get there"?
I wish I could say, Mitch, that it's not happening here, but it is happening here. I don't really want to go too much into it, but it's disappointing. You're right. I see this in the United States. What's going on in your country? And we see it here. Absolutely, it's been like that for years now in Canada. Things have changed quite a bit. I think the whole landscape has changed, and it saddens me. And just a couple of weeks ago, I heard about this. How, when people take polls for the general public, especially a younger generation, and they're asking them where you get your news and who do you trust, a lot of people are saying now that they think influencers and YouTube people are way more trustworthy than any other news source, right? And there are people that believe that, right? They don't trust traditional media outlets. Now I understand, look, it's not that I trust every single news outlet, because of course many of them don't do their due diligence, and doing really, really good journalism is expensive, and it takes work, and it takes talent, and everyone's trying to chase what will generate more revenue, which is more, anything that is clickable, anything that has a salacious headline. There's that, and it just seems like every day there are fewer and fewer institutions that can be trusted. But going the other way, I mean, when people tell me that they trust a YouTuber more, I just think that's really dangerous. Yeah, because that person, how do you vet that person?
Yeah, I woke up this morning with the news that our president is out there soliciting other countries to participate in the Iran war. They're worried about guarding the Straits of Hormuz, and they said that Japan has now sent help to guard the Straits of Hormuz. And here's what their contribution is to that problem. For just a brief second, I had to say, maybe they did. Maybe they sent Godzilla in because of Straits of Hormuz is not that wide. Maybe they sent them in there. But that's just an example of the way the news is. You have to concentrate on the truthiness, as Steve Colbert says, of the stories that are being disseminated out there. So if you have a news operation, even as big as CBS News is, whatever, and you have to question the veracity of the reporting, then you might go looking for some other reporting that's more in line with your point of view or your world view. And whoops, banged the microphone, sorry. That seems to be catching on today. So that's, I think, the thing that's going to affect not only CBS News, but all the other news operations that traditionally have provided at least something that I trusted. But I got a trick to dealing with that information now. I just don't watch the news anymore. I'm not interested in anybody's interpretation of what's going on out there. Yeah, there's a war on. I got that. I might learn a little bit of what's going on by watching some various social media things, which is the wrong way, by the way, to get your news. But what's my choice? Is Al Jazeera, is that an undisputed, truthful network? I can't tell. So I'm sorry to see it happen. I'm sorry to see a lot of these organizations go. I'm sorry about the nature of the business. And Mark, how are you going to react to it? Who do you have as a news affiliate at your WGMD talk station?
So the Talk of Delmarva has Fox Radio News that comes in and does the top of the hour and the bottom of the hour. And then we have Fox Business News highlights as well.
I think Fox is going to be around.
Yeah. What's interesting about this is, did they just lose sight of their audience? Because there's so many places to get the national news. Could they have, if they were passionate about it, as you say, could they have had local affiliates feed them news back, and then with all the technology we have today, have a separate clip that went out to different regions with the local news in those regions.
Well, that's a way we used to, when we were an ABC affiliate in the 70s at the station I worked at, we contributed local news all the time to the network, and we got paid, like some $20 a news soundbite. But that's the way it's always been. I think that the problem is not the news organizations doing something wrong. I think it's the way people consume media and information that's going wrong. And I think that, clickbait and things like that, or bombastic headlines, like Alex was saying, I think that's what drives the business. It's a business, and you're competing for eyeballs, and you do it by saying things that are, that gets under people's skin, makes them angry, makes them happy. Is it local? That's just what the business has gone to, and I lament that passing of when the days where you treated that, with kid gloves, and you told the news like Walter did, without interfering with your worldview, as it were. You either took it or you lost it. So it's going to continue to happen. I think you're going to see more and more of them sign off in favor of getting their news from Joe Rogan or Mr. Beast, or all those kinds of services. Go ahead.
There's
Alex.
one thing I want to jump in here too on this, because one of the things that I wanted to talk to you all about, including the audience, I'll throw this at you guys, everyone watching now, is this going to continue as a trend? Do we think that we're going to see more and more of these big news organizations, this type of thing, like what we're seeing this week with CBS News Radio? Are we going to see more of that? And is the eventual landscape going to look like, effectively, the ones that are going to remain in business and the ones that are going to be profitable are going to be the ones like Mark? What Mark has talked about in the past on this show is that you get a bunch of people that are really passionate about radio. They're hyper local. That's how they want to do it. I think that's a lot of people say hyper local is the way to go, and that's the way I see it. So is that what you guys think? Do you think that this is going to be the trend, that eventually what we're going to end up with, everybody else goes to YouTube, they go to all these other modern platforms, but what will remain successful in terrestrial is these smaller radio stations that are more hyper-local focused, like not these big conglomerates?
Yeah, I think you're really onto something, and that's because we never did have one before the internet. There was no way, really, without a lot of coordination, to get a message out across the entire country at once. You had to have affiliate stations that would team up and air whatever the NBC, CBS, Fox, ABC, whatever the big names were actually, broadcasting. And at some point in time, ABC had affiliates they owned wholly, and I'm sure CBS and Fox did as well. But so now with the advent of the internet, I think you're going to see a lot of the national programming go to a distribution method that allows them to distribute very easily all at once to the entire nation. And I think you're going to see the local stay local, because over broadcasting, they're within their 30-mile radius or whatever it is, depending on what license you have and how many watts and all that stuff. But they're going to reach the local. Now, I mean, what we do is we have Fox News for 2 or 3 minutes at the top of the hour, and then we go to local news for 2 or 3 minutes. And then we have shows that focus on, two of the 3 major local shows we do a day are local, and we have one that's national topics. So
there were portents of the future even back in the old days. Like, remember the National Enquirer with crazy stories about 2-headed aliens being born to a mother in Minnesota? I mean, they just had outrageous headlines that piqued people's interest, and they were always stuffed near the cash register at the grocery store, and people would grab these up because they were so titillating in their content. And today it's the same way. It's that the crazy headlines, the weirder the story is, whether it's Godzilla going to the Straits of Hormuz or whatever, that's what it is. And the other thing is that way people consume media now is they don't sit for half an hour or an hour and watch the news to see it from from start to finish. They cherry pick what they want to talk about or hear in terms of what's on the YouTube. So you only have so much bandwidth in your little head to cherry pick what you like, and then you sort of gravitate towards where your political views live, whether it's Fox or CNN or MSNBC or Al Jazeera or whoever it is. And then the more you get news that appeals to your sensibilities, the more you're going to pay attention to it because they're not shaking your worldview. To me, news should shake you up a little bit and change your point of view because it's educating you about what's really going on in the world. So that's the thing I lament, but I can't change the fact that people prefer to have that information spoon-fed to them. They want to have it spoon-fed to them in a way that...
They're not so worried about it being live anymore for certain things. They want to just be able to watch it when they have time to watch it.
They want cooler talk, too. They want to be able to go talk to their friend. Hey, did you see the story about Godzilla's going to the Straits of Hormuz? Whatever. It's just whatever that creates, makes you more important because you're passing on news and information.
Yeah, and I think, Mitch, there's another thing. There's a psychological thing that, again, I'm going to go back to my example of when they do these surveys and they say that people in their 20s now, oops, let me go back to me there. When people in their 20s are saying that they don't trust these big companies, I think there's something to that. And actually, it occurs to me too, if we talk about radio, I know the way I feel is that I think there's the psychological factor of the bigger the organization, the less I'm going to trust you. And I just think that there's just something about human beings that the bigger the organization, the more corporate it feels, we just don't want to trust that organization. And I think there might be, that's one way that smaller radio stations, I think, might be able to survive, is that I just feel like, this is totally anecdotal, I don't have any evidence, but I just feel that the connection that the audience has with their favorite local host at a smaller radio station, I feel like that relationship is stronger than just listening to the CBS, the CBSs of the world, right? Mark, am I way off base? Am I way off base?
No, I think you may be onto something. I think that it might fall into a conspiracy theory that you can't trust Big Brother anymore. And I think people generally don't trust government, don't trust giant news organizations. And Mark is ready to explode. So I'm going to pass it to him.
I think Alex is on to something important here because when you look at this, Paramount has just purchased CBS. So here's a company that makes movies, I guess. And then Paramount's in the middle of either merging or being purchased by, is it Skydance? Another
I wonder why Paramount has so much debt. They just keep digging it bigger.
They all do.
Well, they all do, but the point is that there's less. The whole history of the CBS News Network means nothing to these people that are making, they're Hollywood folks. So, at least I don't think it does. So,
well, look at Warner Brothers. What a storied information entertainment company that now is part of Discovery and Paramount. And who is it that bought them? Netflix, is it? Just bought.
Well, what? HBO let me ask this: what is in it for Paramount, Mark, to own CBS like this particular?
It's all these executives that are making these decisions all have deals where they walk away with hundreds of millions of dollars if they can make these deals. It's in a constant set of motion. It's not necessarily what's better for the economy and better for the world. It's what's better for their bottom line. So that's the conspiracy of the big companies, the venture capitalists, the big organizations that are going to survive the latest purge. I think what's going to happen is we're going to have a lot fewer server based companies out there. I don't think they're all going to make it. Maybe Disney will survive. Paramount probably gets chewed up by somebody. HBO, Warner, whatever. It's just going to consolidate down to a working number that can support those number of businesses. So we have to be on the sidelines and consider, well, what's in it for us? You have to think, well, what's in it for Paramount being absorbed by HBO? Does that mean my HBO service that I pay for every month is now going to be including Paramount movies and shows. I mean, it's like, that's the way I look at it, is like, what's in it for me? Do I need that?
Well,
Mark, you're got something.
No, I was just going to say back to Alex's comment was that, what's in it for Paramount. But I think if you go back in time, and correct me if I'm wrong, but, CBS was quite the powerhouse at weekly TV shows like All in the Family and, was I Love Lucy a CBS production at first? So a lot of those old...
I don't recall.
Yeah, those old sitcoms, I think, were all out of a studio called CBS, and here's Paramount, a competing studio at the time.
Yeah,
so
but there was only 3 networks, essentially, that were battling that out. And ABC came along late in the game, and they sort of had their time. And you're right, CBS had a lot of great properties for a while, but it never lasts forever. It's like only a matter of time before somebody else comes along. And maybe it's going to be, Prime or, whatever. And by the way, while we're chatting away here about these various things, we ask you, our viewers and listeners, to participate in the conversation. You can do that by going to Makana at ask.thelastangrydj.com, and you can get involved in this conversation. It's a good talk. I mean, this is very interesting to analyze this, because it's going to help us decide where are we going to consume information, where are we going to get our true data from. And it's not necessarily entertainment or social media. It's news. It's things that are out there that affect you and your family and your friends, that you really need to have the truth associated with it, and not be worried that somebody behind the scenes is cashing in on some big deal if you agree to the way of going. Here's the way you deal with all these services that you're every month you probably scratch your head and say, I got to get rid of some of these because I'm paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars. The way you look at it is, if you're going to negotiate with them, remind them that they need you more as a written subscriber than they need your money. That's the long and the short of it. They need you as a subscriber more than you paying them. And I guarantee you that they will always make a deal that's lower than what you're currently paying. Just work that a little bit into their little heads, and then they'll explode. They don't want to lose you as a subscriber. So I know that's a little anecdotal ending for our conversation.
Well,
but,
before we end, let me bring some comments in. Mark Britton in the chat says it won't really affect him at all. And Brad Miller says that people are always going to seek out confirmation bias. So those are two.
So they can decide.
So
they're going to confirmation bias, as in, I agree with the way they think, therefore I'm going to subscribe to Fox News or whatever. Is that what you mean?
You could take it to that level, but I think he's just saying they're always going to search for what they agree with, and as
that's
a form
what I mean.
Of confirmation.
Yeah. If it doesn't completely really. I don't believe that. I don't think that's happening. I don't think that president would do that or whatever. So that's the long and the short of it. It's a developing story. We just remind you to keep your feet solidly on the ground and be real. I mean, consider every decision that's being made and see if it makes sense, and see if you can understand the motivation behind it all. So you know what's going on. All right, let's jump to another category here. We've certainly given that almost a half hour of chat time here on the show. What's the next subject?
Our next subject is how goes the battle for the car dashboard, the players, Apple, Google, and the automakers.
Yeah, let me explain what that is. Is that the battle now is a marketing battle that's being waged. At one point, it was good to have Apple Play in your car, or Google or Android or whatever in your car. It was a convenience thing, and I think the auto dealers said, yeah, why not? The automakers, let's include that. But now they're realizing that there's a lot of real estate up there on the front of that dashboard. And when people aren't driving a car, they may be paying a lot of attention to it. So they want to get in. They want to get in on this marketing battle. So, like now, when you turn on your car, when you start it up, it comes up with a screen that generally shows the automaker logo. That's worth gold to them. They love that, because that builds that affinity and affiliation you have with that automaker. They don't want it going to Apple or to Google. They would rather have their own variety of applications that utilize the internet to stream media into your car. So they would much rather have it all be them. So that's the real battle that's being fought here. The battle is being fought between the companies that make the cars and the companies that make the apps that run in the car. And I think that the word is that, didn't I hear, and Alex, I'll throw over to you, didn't I hear that Apple CarPlay is maybe the thing of the past? They may not.
It's not a thing of the past, but it's really interesting because one of the car manufacturers that has been steadfast in their ability to completely deny their customers of Apple CarPlay is Tesla, and they finally have capitulated after years of people just totally bashing them online, saying, "I can't believe you're not supporting Apple CarPlay." And some people have absolutely boycotted Tesla. I know famously in office hours, Alex Lindsay said many times, "I'm not buying a Tesla because they won't support Apple CarPlay." So finally they're doing it.
He did buy a Tesla, by the way.
Yeah, well, okay. But anyways, like they're it's not just Tesla, but any car manufacturer that is insistent on having their own experience and not supporting these other platforms. It's incredibly frustrating because, look, I get it. You think your experience, you think your entertainment system is going to be superior. Oftentimes it's not. Oftentimes it's junk. And I would much rather have a choice as a consumer on which one I'd rather use. And the fact of the matter is, we all have these phones with us at all times, right? All our data, everything about our lives, our existence is on our phones. Our apps, our communication tools that we use, right? Our messages and the way we look at things. It's all there. And so you're really alienating a large percentage of people that just do not want to use whatever crap entertainment system you want to force feed down our throats. Just let us, it's fine if you want to have your own. I'm just saying allow people to at least have an option, right? If I think yours is a better experience, I'll use it. But that should be up to me, not to you.
And sometimes it might be other things that are affecting that. I'll go back to the 80s and the 70s and maybe even into the 90s when you bought a new car and it had a reasonable FM stereo in it. It might have surround. It might have stereo FM. I remember buying cars and they didn't even have FM in them. It was the automakers saying that we don't want to increase the value of this car, the cost of this car, by putting high quality audio equipment in it. We're going to give just the lowest common denominator of quality. And then that created a secondary market for the longest time.
Sure.
And Alex, you probably feel a little bit of this. And Mark, you're probably old enough to that they were selling. There were places that sold up, like a Pioneer Super Tuner.
There still are. I mean, there are places. There's a place down the street that does all sorts of modifications. Not down the street in Wilmington, Delaware.
Close enough.
But anyways, yeah, there's lots of places like that do those kind of modifications. I used to do those modifications to my cars all the time. I would gut the whole. In fact, one car I took all the paneling off. I put in like mass loaded vinyl inside the doors to acoustically treated my car. I replaced all the speakers. I replaced the wiring harness. Dynamat, exactly. I put a subwoofer in there. I replaced all the speakers. I replaced the entertainment unit. There was nothing that was factory in there. But I will say this. It's good that car manufacturers have finally woken up to the fact that people want decent audio in their cars, and those entertainment systems in modern cars have gotten substantially better over the years. Even in base model cars now, they don't totally sound like junk. If you own a car from 20 years ago, they're pretty bad. But if you bought a car in the last, I'd say 5 years or so, they're pretty decent sounding, and they give you, of course, those optional upgrade packages. So they obviously have woken up to the fact that people care about sound quality, and we've got
it's a sales position because
sure,
my used Benz that I bought has a Harman Kardon sound system in it. It's pretty decent equipment out of Germany. It's not the top of the line, but they also Benz also has Bang & Olufsen. I mean, top of the line design, beautiful stuff. And there's some other stuff I'm trying to recall. But name brands started leaking into the inside of your car as an entertainment center. And let's face it, for the longest time, people eventually came around to thinking that the quality of sound and the quality of the time they spent in their car was probably the best listening environment they had to put a surround system in and put a woofer and, get rid of the echoey sound and put a decent tuner. And the other thing that contributed to this move was when they started realizing that it was a computer that was driving your entertainment system, which had your apps that ran the car itself and your navigation and your phone and all that. It's just a computer, and all I had to do was put an app on it that would do this better than that. So you're right. I mean, it's sort of morphed from being a customization thing to a feature that people go looking for because now they realize how important those things are. And that's, again, part of this battle of the dashboard. It's part of a marketing thing. Go ahead, Mark.
We've moved beyond the what people want, and it's become Google's ability to share information with the automakers and their ability to really build the whole underlying operating system of the entire vehicle. Chevrolet.
So the value is the data that they promised that they can gather from
the value is the data they promised the manufacturers, and right now Chevrolet is using Google's operating system to run the car, and so you can still have CarPlay in the vehicles that run on gas and diesel, but not in the electric vehicles. The electric vehicles only offer you Google. They no longer offer CarPlay. And when you do have CarPlay, I know I have a newer Chevrolet, and CarPlay is second fiddle to Google. Google wants to do everything, and you have to go through so many menus to turn the Google part off to keep the CarPlay as the priority.
And it probably hurts them, meaning the auto companies, that people insist that their iPhone has an integration to the car, maybe their Android phone too. So they would love to take over all of that stuff. They would like it all to be part of your car system. I mean, that's the nature of the beast out there.
Yeah, they want the data. They want to know everything about everybody so they can pitch the ads to them. And Apple is more about privacy, so I think Apple's going to lose the battle.
Apple needs to make a car. I mean, there's been rumors of them doing that, but they haven't got around to it.
So
make a car, Apple.
Yeah, Brian Miller's.
Hold on a second. I just want to say, I guess you missed that news a couple of years ago. That Apple abandoned that project. They poured millions of dollars into that thing and then just threw it in the trash because they have the money, right. And they're that kind of company that said, well, we're not going to do it if half-hearted. They're only going to do something if the experience is genuinely better than everyone else.
I think they realized they were grabbing a tiger by the tail. To do that, to get into the automobile. But then they did that with the iPhone. They weren't in the Nokia business space until all of a sudden they decided they were. And maybe if Steve Jobs was still alive,
tablets
then
too. Look at tablets. Microsoft was the first company to have those the whole tablet PC experience. And Apple, everybody laughed, including Steve Ballmer, and said, that iPad thing, that's never going to take off. I mean, we did that years ago, and yeah.
Oh, they laughed at the Newton. Remember the Newton? That was a pretty good device. That lost out.
It was an interesting idea, but the technology wasn't there. It just wasn't there. It was too early.
And I think Steve Jobs nixed that completely. He said, that's it. That's not going to be what people want. Go ahead, Mark. So
in the chat, Brian Miller says, Apple CarPlay is an absolute requirement for my car buying business. And some guy, Steve Stryker, says your car is leaking. I don't know if that's a reference to something in Mitch's past.
My car is leaking?
My car's leaking, question mark.
Hold on a second. I think Mitch has got to step outside and go to the parking lot there.
I had that actual move that I wanted to make, but I'm on a show. I can't go.
He's standing outside of your house and he's looking at an oil leak in your car.
But how many people look under their car? You can tell a lot about the health of your car. And then you go over and you got to rub it and smell it. See, well,
you got to check that stuff. You got to check.
Is that ATF? Is that battery fluid?
Yeah, Brian.
Is that
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Brian goes on and says, just wait until you have to wait 30 seconds or a minute before you can actually start the car to watch the ad.
Oh, okay,
my
yeah.
God.
Yeah.
Do you like
think
going
about
to
that.
I was in the
Don't
business.
give them ideas. Don't give them ideas.
I was in the business of doing radio for retail, and we were talking to the folks at Sunoco, and we wanted to put our devices into the Sunoco pumps so that when you pumped gas, you were entertained with the Entertainment Tonight
Music.
and TMZ or whatever else it was, and the research showed that it was people had a vague interest in it, but really felt that was the only quiet time that they had when they walked over and pumped the gas into the car. So they really didn't want to be distracted by messages. And now I see them doing this, and they're right. It's really annoying. I would pay money to be able to turn that little message off. And I had another business that we were working with a company called Food Court Entertainment, which was a company that put multimedia into the food courts at large mall organizations. And you would think that people would like to sit down and have a meal and look up and see entertainment from CNN and other organizations and nice music in between. It was pretty sophisticated. We built like literally TV stations into these food courts, and we got shot down ultimately because people wanted that space to be a quiet space. They wanted a break from all the hubbub. So I see what you're saying about not tolerating the ad. But there is an ad in your car right now. It's the ad of the logo popping up on the screen and waiting for it to build. And, my Benz does its little Mercedes-Benz, and it's Mercedes. And I'm sure it does it with your Chevy and your Ford and so on and so forth. They'll do anything to grab a piece of your mind share as long as they can. And if they can build their own apps where you got to rely on, nothing would make a car dealer or a car company more happy than to have the world's greatest car driving app that allows you to listen to radio, to gather information, to watch YouTube. They want it all. And that's the battle that's being done. And what they're realizing is that Apple does a pretty darn good job of that, and Google does a pretty darn good job of that. How do they compete with them? So time will tell. So that's the battle of the dashboard that we're talking about. And ultimately, the one that's going to win is the one that has the most mind share and brings it back to the automaker because they want to be able to control it. They don't like the idea they got to go outside the walls of their business or corporate empire to get anything. They don't want to depend on anybody. So unless anybody else has an opinion or any questions coming in as feedback, let's move on to our next.
Yeah, well, Mark Britton just says the first thing you used to do was rip out the stereo and put in a hi-fi, or rip out wherever you had the radio.
You got a Pioneer Super Tuner.
You won't be able to do that anymore because it's the whole operating
Jensen
system for the car.
speakers in there. And they made speakers. You go to Crutchfield, and they made speakers that fit exactly in the same spot. What are you amazed at?
Crutchfield. I haven't heard that in a long time.
Yeah, but they still do it. I mean, you tell Crutchfield what kind of a car you got, they'll tell you exactly what kind of better speakers you have. Here's the thing. I'm happy with the setup, the Harman Kardon setup I have in my car. It's got plenty of bass. I'm happy with it. So there you go.
Right.
What's
next up?
What's going on?
Next up on the rundown, the quality of recorded music since the 1970s.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up.
Worse?
I'm glad you brought that up because a lot has changed, and it's not all technical oriented. It's that, and the reasoning behind the rundown comment that I put on there is based on how do you compare the quality of the sound? It could be a technical thing of a recorded song that was done in the 60s or 70s versus something that's current. Now, I can't speak for the current music because I don't like to listen to it. It's not my cup of tea. I think Pro Tool was the greatest sea change in the recording industry because it did a couple of things. First of all, it moved people out of these giant, beautiful recording studios that were bespoke facilities that were built for the purpose of recording songs like Abbey Road or the record plant or the power station or all these giant studios, Ocean Way, that were around the country or the world, that their job was to get the best out of the performances of the artist and record them onto tape and create a production. Then what happened is that people realized they didn't need to go to these expensive facilities and studios, and the move, I would say, probably in the late 70s, going into the 80s, the move was to have your own home studio. It could be a converted garage, your basement, the barn out back. And with Pro Tools, you didn't need all the same equipment. And what happened is a lot of the quality of the craftsmanship that built the room, which sonically was perfect for recording, was modified to accommodate the ability of Pro Tools to record little pieces and then hack them together and do this and that. This affected the way music was recorded and also the way it was sounded. And as time went on, I think people began to realize that they didn't really care that they could hear the reverb or the lack thereof in an unnatural space in somebody's garage or their home. That was a big move that put a lot of recording studios out of business, even ones owned by the record companies, because those were they were like beautiful, crafted facilities. They were gorgeous with big consoles and multi-track tape machines, and even in the digital age, they had these things. And the way they recorded in those studios, everywhere from if you go to the Rick Beato, who's such a great interviewer, talking to artists like Steely Dan, for example, and the way they would set up in a room in a recording studio to record together, it was a group effort. They would get together and record. They would make a circle, and they would all play their instruments at the same time. They might put a little bit of an isolation booth into the drum kit or the singer or whatever else, but they played together. And that cooperation, that coordination, the ability of the music to breathe a little bit tempo-wise and sound-wise, I think was part of the missing element. Today, everything's all syncopated. If the timing is off today with Pro Tools, they can adjust that. The arpeggio, what's going on. If the vocalization is slightly off, bang it through that what's that thing called, Alex? The thing that came out.
Well, okay, so there's a
auto-tune.
few things here. So on a technical side, you've got auto-tune, which can pitch correct or pitch shift, and we're really talking about pitch correction for vocals. But there's also, I think, Mitch, what you touched on too, is this whole obsession with the quantization of everything, including right down to the drums being perfect, to the beat, like in terms of everything being aligned to this grid. So it really takes that spontaneity, the human quality of the imperfection in the playing, and it starts to become too clinical sounding. But to address your specific question, are things worse now? I don't agree. I think that there are, I think it's really easy to sit back and say, well, the music is way worse now, because everybody says that, right? Every new generation that goes by, we always say the same thing. Our parents said the same thing about our music. Then when we grew up, I find myself also saying that too. But frankly, it's not true, because right now, technology has gotten so good. The recording capability is so good now. Really, it's on you as the creative person to learn your craft. And I've heard some incredible recordings over the last couple of years, like really, really good recordings. Now, across the board for any genre, I don't care what it is, pop music, rock, heavy metal, country music, folk music, hip hop, I can take any of those genres and I can tell you I've listened to some really good quality recordings. Granted, there are not a ton of them that really blow me away, but they absolutely exist, and I believe they exist in almost any era of music. You just need to know where to find that stuff.
So do you think?
Go ahead, Mark. You have it.
So do you think, Alex, that part of the issue, and this is actually Mitch too, with the fact that the recording isn't done at as high a level, if you want to make that argument, because people are consuming music on most people consume music, I would assume, just by turning on some music app on their phone and throwing the phone down on the desk while they're doing other things. So whether it's stereo or mono, the stereo speakers are so close together you can't even tell it's stereo anymore anyway. And maybe 90% of the people are listening to it at a lower level of quality.
I'll draw a parallel to that.
There's more quality there.
Here's a parallel to that. When cassettes came out, it's an inferior recording methodology, but it did something that you couldn't heretofore do. You couldn't make mixtapes off an LP unless you had some kind of intermediate recording method.
Right.
And in a car, all that complaints that made about the signal to noise of a cassette and the quality of the sound, you toss it out the window because there's so much background noise in a car anyhow. The cassettes just made it more convenient, and that's why cassettes were big. The record companies went berserk when cassettes became. They wanted to put a tax on every blank cassette that was being released because they thought it was going to eat into their sales. Maybe it did, but I think it actually enhanced the quality of people realizing, hey, now I can create my own mixtape and do this and do that.
Look, I think what Mark's talking about, I think it's not any one specific thing, but I think that a lot of people, because of budgets, a lot of indie artists don't have necessarily a contract with a record label, so they'll record stuff in their basement, and I think that's part of it. But that's one aspect. There are plenty of recordings that are being done in studios that are being done by not at a super high level. Every city has independent recording studios, and those recording studios may not have the best people working there, right? They're competent, but they may not be working at a certain level, and I think that's part of it. There's not that many incredibly talented producers and engineers, I think, enough where the average person could afford their services, right? So a lot of people are doing stuff on really tiny budgets, and that'll show. But also it's the production. It's how we're producing stuff. People are doing stuff, again, going back to how we're producing stuff inside our digital audio workstations, putting everything to a grid, over reliance on technology like auto-tune to pitch correct stuff. All this stuff contributes to stuff just not sounding super high fidelity, right? Just smashing smashing the dynamics, taking your mix and driving it into a peak limiter so that it's just absolutely obliterated. So everything's just as loud and it's just hammering your ears with sound, That's not how I like to listen to music.
It's the same way when you could set type on your Macintosh. A lot of bad typesetting started happening because people didn't understand how they used the media. Same thing with the recording industry. Your comparison of the way things sounded back in the 70s versus the way they sound today. Listen to a song like Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven, which is a great layered musical masterpiece. It doesn't maintain the time through the whole song. It actually speeds up and then slows down and does other things. They would never do that on a Pro Tools session. And maybe they didn't do it on purpose, but it was there. And there were a lot of songs that were done that had happy accidents because it happened in a studio. You're right to point out that it was very expensive to go into a recording studio back in the day. When you signed with a record company, the record company promised that you could get so many albums out of the deal, and they were expensive to record and produce. So the time spent in those studios, those churches of music, was so carefully done and pre-planned that the work that came out of it was so much great. Like Abbey Road isn't necessarily the most beautiful studio in the world, but it had the most incredible staff of people that were running it. And you could bring the London Symphony Orchestra in to play the horn sections or whatever. You can't do that in a home studio in a garage somewhere. So things have changed a lot. And the other part is like the same thing that's happening to motion pictures is that I always felt that it was a story that was the most important thing with movies. Well, it isn't now. It's the special effects and the soundtrack or the actors involved. Same thing with the songs. If the words and the music and the melody that were being done are inferior, but maybe the pristine quality it doesn't overshadow the quality of the material. My favorite song of all time, and Rick Beato agrees, is "Wichita Lineman," written by Jimmy Webb, sung by Glenn Campbell. Now, Glenn Campbell's not my favorite, recording artist, but if you listen and analyze that song, it's so beautiful in the way it was done. It was done discreetly in a studio where they had people concentrating on the microphone selection and the quality of the verse and the way it was edited and recorded. That just, to me, is missing because anybody can do a Pro Tools session, and some of them are better than others. Go ahead.
Do you think we'll ever have something like the Wrecking Crew with Glenn Campbell and Brian Wilson and all those folks that were?
Oh, we had it before, and that brings up a good point. You had a group in the 60s and 70s that recorded probably about half of all the hit songs that were out there. It was the same group that performed them. Different artists singing and maybe playing some of the instruments. The Carpenters, for example. Karen Carpenter is a very misunderstood singing. Her singing is just so beautiful, and her timing and her ability to sing. Same with the Beach Boys. A lot of these people got sold as, well, they're too bubblegummy or poppy or whatever. Well, it might have been the consistency of the Wrecking Crew that played together every day, multiple sessions, that made part of that sound so quality because they knew how to play together so well.
But they also went back and rewrote some of the music and the scores for those songs.
Well, because these are people that knew their music chops. Right. They might have had a jazz or a blues background, and they said, this blues riff that I've used forever that I learned back in the old days would be perfect for the song. Right. And they would bring it into it. And on the other side of the coin, the Motown craze, that was done by the Funky Bunch or the Funk Brothers. And it was another group like the Wrecking Crew that played, rhythm and blues so well, and they brought so many outside influences into it that when they played together, there was a consistency. Listen to all the Motown music done in the 60s and 70s. It's so consistent.
I don't know how much new music you listen to, but have you? Do you know who Stephen Wilson Jr. is?
I do not.
Oh, you gotta look him up. See, he's kind of a rising star in the sort of country rock space, but he's got his songwriting and he was just on Howard Stern a couple weeks ago. You got to look up Stephen Wilson Jr.
I probably have seen him on a Rick Beato episode.
I don't think he's been on that show yet, but yeah, he's sort of a rising star. He's really talented, and his album that he put out, I think he's had a few EPs, but they sound really good. There are plenty of bands out there that are not at the kind of A-list celebrity, they're not like at that level, but they have great songs, great musicians. The sound quality of their albums are really good. Again, you gotta know where to find them, but they exist. They're out there.
Yeah, I mean, there probably are yet to be heard from artists that could do anything that we've heard before that we'd say, hey, Led Zeppelin was the greatest band of all time. They haven't come out yet. My problem is the mechanism that they use to capture that story is a little too cookie cutter for my taste. And maybe that's my age showing through here, but I liked a lot of the living, breathing quality. I mean, even an album was an experience. It wasn't a song. It was an album that enhanced your listening experience. That's probably one of the reasons why vinyl records continue to increase in value and interest, because you don't release a single. Well, you can, but you don't release anything but a full album of an artist, and you appreciate it. The whole process of listening to it in a linear fashion. So yeah, things are different. Even MP3s and listening on an iPhone. People got used to bad quality compression, and they traded that for convenience. And having thousands of songs on an iPhone.
Before we finish up on this, I'm just going to mention this album. And if anyone in the chat that's watching this, if you haven't heard of Stephen Wilson Jr., go look him up. But start with this album. He doesn't really have a ton of music out. But this album, Son of Dad, has it's such an awesome album, and I'm going to cut to it now so you can see that. Son of Dad is the name of the album, Stephen Wilson Jr. So I highly recommend having a listen to this.
There you go. Alex has the pulse of the world. I don't even admit that anything beyond Katy Perry, Taylor Swift or whatever. That's as far as I'll go into that. So if you have a comment or question about that, feel free to go to ask.thelastangry.dj.com. I know it's a very big subject, but I think the quality of music has changed. Not necessarily worse, but I feel it's worse because I grew up with the other stuff, the classic rock, and they aren't making that anymore. They're not making classic rock. It's already been made. So you got to appreciate that for what it is. What's next up?
All right. Next up, we have this big event that happens every year called NAB. And we're just wondering, who would you like us to interview at NAB?
Mark, what does that stand for, NAB?
The National Association of Broadcasters. You thought you'd get me, didn't you? You thought you'd get me.
Well, it's an organization, sure. Yeah. And it's a big event. It's where all the big broadcast people go. Not so much the way it was when I used to go, and maybe Mark, but
it certainly has changed a lot, for sure.
It's hanging on. It's hanging on. Because it's
more
not
content creator focused. There's so much like prosumer product now at that type
I
of
agree.
thing.
I think it had a lot to do with the expensive equipment it took to be on the air. Whether it's a transmitter or an antenna or an STL or automation or cart machines or playback automation devices or processing. Those things are all there, but they're greatly reduced because broadcasters don't have that kind of money, especially the TV organizations. So it covers radio, television, and nowadays they also include social media and media like YouTube and things like that. So, we were just thinking out loud that if we were able to get people on the floor at NAB and they could go around and go to some of the booths, some of these people, we can't get a hold of them unless we have a real good reason. What if we had that ability to do that? That's just, I'm being theoretical here. What if we could interview some of these people and put a mic in front of them and talk to them? Who would you like that to be? Somebody in the industry that wouldn't normally appear on a Zoom call, certainly wouldn't go a place to be recorded. Maybe they don't even have a Zoom room. Who knows? So again, go to ask.thelastangry.dj and tell us. NAB's coming up. I think it's April 12th for that week. I'd have to have a calendar to look at, but it's coming up. It's merely a few weeks away. So that would be a cool thing to do. Do we have any other questions that might have popped in here, Mark, that we need to cover?
We do. Just bear with me one moment. I need to get to the next one, and it's from Jerry Hoyle, and it says, let's have a review of that trip.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Trip?
That's Alex was gone for 2 weeks. He went to Tokyo.
Alex.
Konnichiwa.
I went to Japan.
Yeah.
I'll talk a little bit about that. I wish I had hooked up this computer so you can see some of the photos. But I had a great trip where I was in Japan for 12 days. Thanks for that, Mitch. Needed that once again. Sound effects, Godzilla. I ended up in Tokyo for 4 days, and that's how I started my trip. Which, by the way, I just want to give a shout out to friend of the show, Scott Hancock, who's part of the Office Hours community. He lives in Tokyo. And he was incredibly gracious. I was traveling in Japan with family, and he was nice enough to offer to drive us around Tokyo. So he drove us around and showed us a whole other side of the city and all these great shops. And just, it really changed the entire experience of the trip to have somebody that lives there. He's been there since 1987. So he knows a little bit about that city, and it was just awesome. We started in Tokyo, then moved on to Kyoto, and then Hiroshima, and then the final leg of the trip was in Osaka. There's too many things that I can't name them all. I had amazing food there. When we were in Kyoto, we went to the Samurai Museum, which was pretty cool. We had a bunch of different guided tours. I got to see Mount Fuji as well. Got some good photos of the mountain as well. Again, I apologize. I should have had this ready so I could have shared some of these photos. We went to a bunch of different temples. I paid my respects to the 47 Ronin as well. If you know the history of the 47 Ronin.
Was Keanu Reeves there?
No.
Oh, okay.
But anyways, it was a good trip. I don't know what else to say about it.
How was the language? I mean, they're very pro-Western over there. What was it like, the cultural and language?
Yeah, so I would say that there were definitely challenges at times, especially with taxi drivers. Most of them didn't really speak any English. I booked a lot of these rides with Uber, so that made it a little bit easier than trying to explain where I'm going, because when you book it through Uber, you tell them where you want to go, and then it shows up on their end, the drop-off point in their language. But I actually found, it was interesting. When we were in the back of a taxi cab the first day in Tokyo, they have these big screens on the back of the seats with all these different sponsored ads, right? And one of the commercials that I saw was for this app, which was actually a Japanese company. It was called Gen AI. And so I downloaded it, and it has all these different services that are kind of rolled in, like AI docs and stuff like that, and all these other AI tools. And one of the services that they have is this real-time translation feature. And I tried it, and I was incredibly impressed with it. The real-time translation feature worked really well, and so it really saved us in many situations where we were trying to have conversations with these taxi cab drivers, and I would just open the app and I would put it in front of us like this, and he would say something in Japanese, and it would repeat it back in English, and pretty much with almost no latency at all. It really blew me away. In fact, one of the cab drivers tried to use Google Translate, and Google Translate did not work as well as this app. And I would actually tell the cab driver, have you heard of this app called Gen AI? It's actually a Japanese company. And when I told them that I found out about the app by an ad that I had seen on the screen in the back, it actually really changed the whole aspect of the conversation. It got everyone laughing, kind of eased up some of the tension. So, language definitely is a barrier, but if you're able to make people laugh, I think that's, it definitely helps. And that tool really
take me
really
to the nearest Arby's.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Would that work?
No Arby's but you know what? They did have tons of American chains. I didn't realize.
Why would you
how
eat
much
American food?
So they
in
had.
Japan?
Every corner of Tokyo had a Starbucks. They had Burger Kings everywhere. There were McDonald's. I saw Wendy's. There's a huge influence over there for sure with fast food. But you wouldn't. I didn't go into any of the fast food chains. Although I did go into a Starbucks quite a few times. But yeah, there's definitely a huge influence there.
Do they like us over there? Do they, the gaijin that you are?
They do. No, they do. In general, I've found that in general, they like everybody. Canadians, Americans, they think pretty highly of everyone. So I think, globally, sometimes you'd probably think, well, the view of America might not be the greatest, but in reality, when you talk to people there, they like everybody. They like Americans.
Well, good on them. Good on them. I love the culture. I would love to go there. A friend of the show,
so
Steven
polite.
Stryker's been there a few times.
They're so generous, and they're so polite. It's really an amazing country, and technologically speaking, too, so ahead in so many different ways. Getting on those trains that are just spot on, perfect, always on time. Everything's clean. The work ethic, and here's a perfect example. Everything is so clean, but not just the cities, people's vehicles. One of the things that I noticed, I was in a taxi cab and I looked at this truck, and this truck was spotless. Most trucks, commercial trucks, people don't wash vehicles very often. The undercarriage, you would look underneath the truck and it's like somebody with a cloth polished. It looked like it was right off of the assembly line. I asked the cab driver, is that a new truck? And he goes, oh no, that truck's 30 years old. So that just shows you people really care. Like it's a reflection on them and their business if their vehicle isn't clean. So they treat everything very, very differently. Like there's a whole attitude shift when you go there.
Well, it's nice to know that that there is a country that likes us still, because that's kind of hard to figure out. And I wonder what they think about our politics. Do they think we've completely lost our minds?
Actually, the cab driver said they like everybody. They like all Americans except for Mitch. That was the only.
I could see how I could end up being the ugly American, because I'd be like, yeah, I'd like a sushi sandwich. And, a sushi sandwich! You know, most Americans, they just say it louder, figuring they'll eventually...
They did hand me a note, Mitch. They said, ease up on the Godzilla sound effects.
Okay, yeah. I'll have you know that I know some people at the Toho company that has the licensing rights to Godzilla. And I can get there anytime, and I would be honored by the Yakuza out there. They like my style. And I've got tattoos. You just haven't seen them. So I could pass for a Yakuza.
So Tony Mobley says, it sounds like you had a great time, Alex. And Brian Miller says he appreciates the no tipping culture in Japan.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. That's a big
Why
thing
wouldn't you
there.
tip? It's just a sign of respect.
So they tips in Japan, tips are not expected. They don't want them. They don't ask for them. You don't see the tip option typically on any kind of debit or credit machine anywhere. The only time I saw it, well, first of all, when you order a ride through Uber, it does give you the option to tip. But in any other commercial setting, their machines don't ask for tips. It's like they set the price at what they think it's worth, and you pay that. They provide a service. They take pride in the service. And that's where the transaction ends. It's not like here where it's like, okay, you haven't given me anything extra, and now like I pick up my food and you just expect me to tip you when I haven't received anything in return. I'm not against tipping necessarily, but it's this entitled expectation that like even big companies like Starbucks now have tip options. You know, you go to pay for a coffee. You walk in to pay for a freaking coffee, and they want $2 from you on the machine. You're a multi-billion-dollar corporation. How about you pay your employees properly?
I go to pick up a meal, and they bring it out to me in my car out front, and they got to give me the stinky eye because I didn't give them 10% tip. I gave them a couple of bucks. But it's like, I got to pay you to take it from your counter and walk it out to me in my car? I mean, that's $2 or $20 or $100? I don't know. I think tipping's gone out. I mean, I respect the servers, but they should be paid more for what they're doing so they don't have to rely on the tips.
Right.
And the taxing associated with it.
I mean, deliveries are different.
We got some
Brian says,
questions here.
Yes, Brian says that tipping in Japan is considered disrespectful. And then we have, I believe, our last question of the day is from Paul Wahus in Austin, Texas. And he says, I think this is directed toward Alex. I hear you bought back some pencils from Japan. Can you show us some?
I only bought one tiny little micro pencil. It's like this really portable mechanical pencil that's made out of aluminum. And I should have grabbed it, I guess. I didn't realize. I just felt like that would bore people. I don't think anybody wants to see my stationery. Mark's got is that a pencil, Mark?
This is a very famous pencil. It used to be called a Barrel 314.
Oh, it's an architectural
pen. Perfect sketching pencil.
Okay, cool.
And years ago, Barrel got brought out, and
I'll be back. Keep talking.
They canceled the 314, and they had so many letters written to them that the new company bought it out, and now it's called General's Drafting number 314.
Yeah, that's an architectural pencil.
Well, it's just it's artist more than architectural, but it's just a very nice soft. It has a nice weight to it, and it takes the tooth of the paper very well. And it's
nice, listen to you talking technical about using the original analog instrument.
Yes,
the pencil,
and turn your pencil as you as you draw, because that will keep it
Can you
sharp.
do calligraphy?
No.
Can you
I
do
can, but you
Caligula?
can't read it.
Oh, okay. All right, good. Alex has something in his hand there he wants to show us.
Well, I just wanted to show. So there, I got a pen and a pencil, and just
look at
for
that.
scale, you can see how tiny they are. These nice little aluminum, and I bought the replacement cartridges, and I bought these portable, these little, a variety. Some of them are the same thing, just different color. But these, I wanted something really portable, so I got these.
So notebooks.
These little notebooks, and it's got a grid inside, which might be hard to see with the light. I'll try to reflect it.
Now they
down,
work
as you
from
can see.
the back forward, right?
They
don't go left to right when they write.
That's true, but I don't write. I don't know how to write in Japanese in kanji or
kanji script.
But yeah, and then I got the a few different sizes. Again, this is the same, more of the same type of thing with a grid on it too. But yeah, I like it. I mean, just for perspective, here's the size of the pen is as tall as the book, which is kind of cool, right?
Can you stick it in the spiral?
I'm going to keep one of these.
Corner?
I'm going to keep one of these in my car. You never know when you're going to need it. It's nice to have something physical where you can just kind of make a note or hand it to somebody or write down important information, that kind of stuff.
Well, we're glad you had a great trip.
And by the way, I'm just gonna add that I bought that stuff at a stationery store that Scott Hancock took us to, and it was, I think, 12 floors of stationery in this building. 12 floors of everything you could possibly want, including one floor that was just dedicated to high-end fountain pens. I mean, they had fountain pens in there that were thousands of dollars. It was unbelievable. And one floor that was just all fabric. Like if you're into making stuff, they had one floor that with all these incredible fabrics, and they just cut that to size. I mean, it's unbelievable. The stuff
they respect that as an art form. We don't.
They really do. There seems to be a much bigger market there, and an appreciation for craftsmanship and making physical things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good. Well, thanks for reporting back on your trip. I'm sure we'll hear more on After Hours, and maybe over there on Office Hours, you'll get a chance to give a few little tidbits of information. And I've put Godzilla to bed for he's on his way to the Hormuz Straits to straighten things out there in the Skinny area where they're trying to push tankers through. He'll take care of that. And we thank you folks for your questions and your comments, and we expect you to continue to do that. Mark, do you have something to add as we
there's
go
all
along
kinds of comments about pencils and drafting now.
It's a big thing.
I have to get to those. Let's see. It's Brian says, take a look at tactile turn pens. And Tamara says, never underestimate the importance of stationery. You always need to have the right tooth to drag that ink or lead across.
My dog loves pencils, by the way. He'll chew right down to the quick. That's his thing to do. Well, thank you for your input. We appreciate it anytime you have something to say. And keep in mind, as we move towards NAB, if we decide to do some interviews out there, we need suggestions from you folks as guests. So give us that as soon as you can. And here to tell us more about how you can reach out and touch Mr. Alexander Knight.
Absolutely. One of the ways that you can do that is by joining us. Join our community. Why not? We got an amazing community. You'll see a QR code floating there over my left shoulder there. If you scan that, just take out the phone from your pocket there, scan it with the camera. That is going to take you to our Discord community. And once you jump in there, you're going to see all these channels there with different topics. So we got a channel for movies and TV shows, one for industry news, one for technology, one for discussion about the show. So if there are things like topics you want to discuss, or like Mitch was asking there earlier, if you want to know what we should focus on for NAB 2026, let us know. You got to jump into Discord to be part of that. And of course, just a reminder, if you want to subscribe to this show, that will ensure you get every new episode when we release it. We record this show as well. So we do live stream it every Sunday at 2 p.m. Pacific. That's 5 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. Thank you to everybody that is watching the show now live. And of course, if you would prefer to listen to it later for your morning commute or whenever you want to listen to the show, you can do that by finding it as a podcast. It is available in audio format wherever you find your podcasts. Some of the platforms that it is available on include Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, Stitcher, Pandora, iHeartRadio, and you can ask your smart devices. You can ask your Amazon Alexa device if you've got it set up. If you've got one of the skills set up for podcasts, you tell it to play The Last Angry DJ, and it should work as well. I'd also like to thank the fine folks at Boink Software, including Oliver Breidenbach, for providing Memo Live. That is the production tool that we use every single week to broadcast this show in stunning quality every single week. So thank you. We would not be able to do this show without Memo Live. If you're looking for a new production tool for your podcast or your show, maybe you've just been screen scraping Zune like an absolute animal, you got to really got to up your game and look at Memo Live. There is a free version that is watermarked, but it is completely free to use with no kind of timeout or annoying trial. So if you want to play with that, I would encourage you to do so. And last but not least, if you'd like to support us monetarily, you can do that by going to patreon.com/TheLastAngryDJ. That's patreon.com/TheLastAngryDJ. Become what we call a coffee supporter at $2 a month. That would help us out greatly. Share the show with a friend. If you know somebody that likes this kind of thing, we'd appreciate it. Back to you, Mitch.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Oh, by the way, quick media point. Great show, since we were just talking about Japan. Tokyo Vice. If you haven't seen it, I think it's on Netflix.
Awesome show.
They two
Amazon,
seasons. I don't know if they're going to get a third. Maybe not. But great show. Sort of gives you the down and dirty film noir aspects of Japan from the gaijin point of view. So check it out.
And based on a true story.
Oh, it is. I didn't know.
It's based on
a journalist.
That is a real guy who went to Japan. And did
How about that? That's cool. That's cool. And Mark, what did you learn from today's show?
Oh my gosh, I learned that Godzilla was on his way to war.
He is. He's going to take care of business at the Straits of Hormuz. This is a tiny area, and they're going to try to jam all the anyhow. That's for Fox News to cover for us. So thank you all for being here. Again, we appreciate your questions and comments. And you can go on Mukana and put those questions and comments in anytime between now and next week's show. We'll be happy to return then. Until then, you be safe, and we'll see you then.
Die.